I will mute you all, but you should be able to unmute, and I will go live to Facebook and it'll all be happening. All right, Mark, over to you.
Well, welcome everybody to this further edition of Lit Balm. As some people know, I sometimes say how many editions we've done, but actually it's been a while and I haven't gone back and like double checked. So I'm just going to say one of the many. But I'm very much looking forward to hearing from this amazing selection of writers that Kurt Lovelace from Pierian Springs Press has put forward for this feature. And it includes DeWitt Henry, Paul Hetherington from Australia, Lindsey Martin-Bowen, Oregon, Caroline Reddy from New York City, but originally from Iran, Michael Sofranko out of Texas, where he says it's, I think, 103 degrees at the moment or something like that. And Sandra Tyler from Massachusetts, a well-documented and published author, and who also runs the Woven Tales Press, an arts and literary journal. But before we start with the feature, I'm going to introduce my co-host Cassandra, who is an award-winning prose poet and international expert on prose poetry. Her prose poetry is widely anthologized and has been translated into Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. Cassandra has published more than 30 books and is currently writing an illustrated book of prose poetry on the Hiroshima Maidens with funding from the Australia Council and the Victorian government. Cassandra also co-wrote Prose Poetry and An Introduction, an amazing tome, and co-edited the Anthology of Australian Prose Poetry. She's also a commissioning editor for Wesley magazine and professor of writing and literature in Melbourne, Australia.
Hi, I'm so glad to see you all. I love seeing your faces on my Sunday morning here. I have a short prose poem based on a pre-Raphaelite painting, and I will read it for you. Waves are thrown on rocks, and I'm Miranda in all her wild blueness. I stand facing the wind as sea foam spots the sky. We're wordless under the slap and patter of water. When you try a new language, salt water rushes into the warm cove of your mouth. We submerge, grazing our buttocks on rocks and broken shells, and you slip your legs around me like a ringed flotation device. In the press of flesh, you rise against me. So I have the pleasure of introducing the one and only Mark Vincennes. He is an Anglo-Swiss American poet, a fiction writer, translator, editor, publisher, designer, multi-genre artist, and musician. He has published over 30 books of poetry, translations, and fiction, including more recently, There Might Be a Moon or a Dog with Gazebo Books here in Australia, 39 Wonders and Other Management Issues, The Pearl Diver of Irunmani with White Pine Press, A Splash of Cave Paint just out from Spite and Dival. Forthcoming, if you can believe that's enough, we have forthcoming the collection, The King of Prussia is Drunk on Stars with Lavender Ink, and a chapbook and Alphabet of Last Rites with Chavina Bava. So Mark has been very lazy lately, just hanging around. Mark is also a prolific translator, and he's translated from the German, Romanian, and French, I hear you say. He has published 11 books of translations, most recently an Audible Blue, Selected Poems 1963 to 2016 by award-winning Swiss poet and novelist, I hear you say, Klaus Mertz. He has, his own work has been translated into many languages, including Japanese, Chinese, Russian, French, Italian, Romanian, Greek, German, and Icelandic. He's currently working on a novel entitled The Age of Occasions. Vincennes is editor and publisher of Mad Hat Press and publisher of New American Writing. He has regulars, here we go. He has lived all over the world, from Brazil to China, to Iceland, to India. He was born in Matilda Hospital on the Peak in Hong Kong, but he now lives on a farm in rural Western Massachusetts, overlooking Herman Melville's Greylock Mountain, Melville's inspiration for Moby Dick, where there are more, here we go, eastern hog-nosed snakes, four-toed salamanders, and bog turtles than people. Mark, that's a nice selection that you've got for us this month.
Well, it's kind of appropriate as well, because This is a new poem from a little body I'm working on called The Marriages of Heaven and Earth. And it's from a section called How to Build a Common Code. It's called Cosmic Alignment, the poem, and it's for Joseph Campbell, the mythologist. We wander from star to star looking for planets in habitable zones, for melt water and radio signals, methane and carbon dioxide, fragments of life shored 1 trillion miles away, rushing into existence, urgently leaving evidence on petrified rock or gold or diadems, on obelisks and menhirs, standing stones, anything that might pass eternal scrutiny. But then to transplant that mind and scatter that seed upon another unexpected cluster of Ur cells who go about making their own private business, yet without the misconduct to cultivate the land and sea and sky, without the epithets to grace temples, and just as one might enter an oyster, that slipping into the gullet, followed by an instant of delight, suggesting the saline rush of oceans, the mouthwash of moon tides, and once again the rush of planets meeting their end time in the crush of a quasar, or the ramifications of a tongue upon the devilish surfaces of hot asphalt, within the particulates of anoxic fumes. Know this: the bull of heaven will return to fight the same battle over and over, until in the end, the hero always wins. Thank you. And now I'm delighted to have a little chit chat with Kurt before I commence doing the bios. Kurt, can we hear you? Seems to have faded.
There we go. I'm unmuted now. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. Go ahead, Mark.
So yes, over to you. Tell us about your new publishing house and all the amazing things you guys are doing.
Well, we originally conceived this back in 2010, 2012 period as a press to publish mathematics textbooks, because another mathematician had a press, and then, but we were doing literary. I was already writing and doing literature all my life, so once I got to the point of thinking I could publish anything, the focus turned toward literature, and now we're purely literary press as our main focus. And we started with printing classics. We have 2 lines of books. We have new voices and classic voices. And the initiative for classic voices is to make very highly readable books of classics for students and anyone to read. And then the new voices, the new authors, is our main focus of the press. And that's the people that are here today, are new authors reading for you. So that's the primary focus of the press, is getting new voices. We call them new voices and classical voices. And the new voices are new authors. So we're trying to get as many and as much spectrum of people across the entire spectrum of literature as we can. They're contemporary writers right now.
So I should ask you, Kurt, is the press open for submissions at the moment as well?
We in the fall are open for submissions the fall, early fall, for a book-length collection of poetry. We do take internal submissions from recommendations, agents, so forth. We do that sort of thing all the time. But we don't have an open submissions, broad open submissions window right now, because we have so much good work coming in at the moment that we're filled up with that loan at the moment. But we want to have an open submission period to read anything that comes in the fall. We'll have open submissions then with 2 submittable. Yeah,
sounds good. All right. Well, shall I go ahead and introduce the authors, Kurt?
Yeah, I can give a quick introduction here. I'll keep it brief so each author can read as much as they can. DeWitt Henry, the founder of Plowshares Literary Magazine, currently contributes to Solstice, the magazine Diverse Voices, and the Woven Tales Press, Arts and Literary Journal. D has a broad over of work he's done. So he's done the novel, The Marriage of Anna Mae Potts, which won the Peter Taylor Prize for the novel. And he's written many, many brilliant memoirs. Essay writing is extraordinary, and he's turned now toward poetry, and he's now working on 3rd or 4th book of poetry recently. So we are publishing a book of his in November called Trim Reckonings, which will be out in November. And right now, I think we also are doing a book of his that is called Foundlings, and it's Found Poems from Prose. And that is going to come out also in the fall. In fact, I'd love to show you a screenshot of that, but we'll get to that. That is a brief introduction to him. I could spend a lot more time talking about DeWitt and his work and his background, but I'll leave it to him to begin reading. Thank you. DeWitt, all yours.
You're still on mute, DeWitt.
Thank you, Lit Balm. Can you hear me?
All good. All good.
Okay. I'm going to begin with reading poems from Foundlings, which had its earlier edition in Australia, which is still available, from Gazebo Books. But Kurt had the idea of making this new edition and distributing it in the United States. And it's basically a collection of salient prose passages from my writing life, other writers, masters, and so forth, that I started to play with and to try to epitomize as poems. The new edition will also have illustrations as shadow boxes from my artist daughter, Ruth K. Henry. So she'll have co-editorship. So the first one is called Echo Chamber. And you don't have to have read E.M. Forster's passage to India, but if you have, you recognize that this is about 2/3 of the way through the novel. And it's one of the polar symbolic places that Forster uses to chart his universe. Echo chamber, and this is the shadow box. You talk in here, it echoes. In a Marabar cave, whatever is said, the same monotonous noise replies, quivers up and down the walls until it is absorbed into the roof. Boom is the sound, or boom, or boom, utterly dull. Hope, politeness, the blowing of a nose, the squeak of a boot, all produce boom. If one managed to murmur pathos, gritty, courage, they exist, but are identical, and so is filth. Everything exists. Nothing has value. If one spoke vileness or quoted lofty poetry, the comment would be, ooh, boom. If one spoke with the tongues of angels and pleaded for all the unhappiness and misunderstanding in the world, past, present, and to come, it would amount to the same. In a Marabar cave, infinity and eternity lose their vastness, all that accommodates them to mankind. Mankind. Boom. This next one is from a real oldie, Jonathan Edwards. Called Tell It Preacher. And this is my illustration, which I hope you can see. That's a spider, that's a fire. The God that holds you over the pit of hell, much as one holds a spider or some loathsome insect over the fire, abhors you and is dreadfully provoked. His wrath towards you burns like fire. He looks upon you as worth of nothing else but to be cast into the fire. He is of purer eyes and to bear to have you in his sight. You have offended him infinitely, and yet nothing but his hand holds you from falling. Oh, sinner, consider the fearful danger you are in. It is a great furnace of wrath, a wide and bottomless pit, full of the fire of wrath, that you are held over it in the hand of that God, whose wrath is provoked and incensed as much against you as against many of the damned in hell. You hang by a slender thread with the flames of divine wrath flashing about it and ready every moment to singe it and burn it asunder, and you have no interest in any mediation and nothing to lay hold of to save yourself, nothing to keep off the flames of wrath, nothing of your own, nothing that you have ever done, nothing that you can do to induce God to spare you one moment. The next one is familiar to anyone who loves James Joyce's The Dead. It's called Insomnia. And this is illustration, which underneath has, I don't know if you can see it, but there's little snowflakes. His wife had told him about a 17-year-old boy so obsessed with her in her youth that he had died of a pneumonia caught from standing under her window one winter night. I think he died for me, she had said. She was asleep now, turned away in bed. The boy had been gentle. She'd been great with him at that time. He was going to study singing only for his health. She'd written him a letter saying she was going up to Dublin and would be back in the summer. The boy had come and stood in the garden, shivering in the rain. He told her he did not want to live, then died a week later. How poor a part he, her husband, had played in her life. One by one, they were all becoming shades. Better pass boldly into that other world in the full glory of some passion and fade and wither. Generous tears filled his eyes. Other forms were near. He was conscious of but could not apprehend their wayward and flickering existence. His own identity was fading out into a gray, impalpable world. A few light taps upon the pane made him turn to the window. It had begun to snow again. He watched sleepily, the flakes, silver and dark, falling obliquely against the lamplight. Heard the snow falling faintly, faintly falling. So my current book is called Restless for Words. And it's about how restless language can be. This is one of the short books. It's called On Candidates. Truth tellers whose candor means whiteness or brilliance, whose candid statements are honest or frank, from the Latin candere, to shine or glow, and candidus, white. Smile, you're on candid camera. Unposed, unguarded. Roman senators wore white like brides in purity or ghosts in winding sheets. For every Coriolanus, a Brutus, Antony, or Caesar, honorable men. He works me, girls. Degraded symbols for their times and ours. Hillary, even in her power suit, whose worldliness I voted for. Performers and mass medians, slogan slingers, applauding for themselves and us. Mr. and Ms. Deeds, go to Washington, where sincerity is a social vice. Promise maker, obfuscator, even candles give light. She doth teach the torches to burn bright. Can't hold a candle to her. All the darkness in the world cannot extinguish the light of a single candle, according to St. Francis. And Frank agreed. And handling, of course, exposes bad eggs. Kind of related to that concern is a poem from Trim Reckonings called On Blurred Words. Change the narrative has trickled down from lit theory, the news anchors, PR pros, and politicians. Perhaps they mean the perception of reality, as well as changing the story to fit a self-serving truth. All stories, whether news or fiction, bear their teller's messages. Optics also emphasizes appearances. Reality, whether staged or not, is distorted by camera lenses, whether photo, film, TV, or iPhone, wide angle, filtered, 360-degree, close-up, tele, or microscopic. Prescription lenses correct blurred vision, but blur for 2020s. Funhouse mirrors distort, as do rose-colored glasses and 3D throwaways. VR goggles convince our eyes of a mirage we know to be a mirage. The narrator, unless unreliable, has more power than the people he or she is telling about. Optics become opinions. Specialists interrogate stories to detect whether they are toxic, meaning as poisonous to culture as love canal to the environment. The moral of W.S.'s King Lear was revised to suit Enlightenment tastes by Nahum Tate, a Hollywood ending before there was Hollywood. Erich Fromm's psychoanalytic reading of Little Red Riding Hood sees the teller as a midwife who punishes the wolf's pregnancy envy by having the huntsman deliver Red and Grandmom, replace them with stones, and drown the wolf. Critics point out, in Disney films of the past decade, family rather than romantic love is what saves us in the end. This way, folks, to Babel and its tower. Oh, thank you. Dead air?
No, all good.
here.
Sorry, I wasn't 100% sure. And I've been asked to introduce Paul Hetherington, who's next. I think that's because he's my cobber, as we'd say, as we'd never say in Australia, but as is Australian slang anyway, I'm going to go with it. And Paul's a very eminent poet here. So he's, I don't know, written all the books and won all the prizes, but I'll go with the bio. He also co-edited with me the prose poetry anthology, the Australian one, and prose poetry, an introduction with Princeton. And there were blood, sweat and tears with that one. So I think I know him pretty well now after writing that tome. So Paul Hetherington is an Australian poet and academic who's published 16 full-length collections of poetry and prose poetry. He is Professor of Writing at the University of Canberra, where he heads the university's International Poetry Studies Institute, better known as IPSI, which he co-founded. He's editor of the international journal Axon, Creative Explorations, which you should check out online. It's a wonderful journal that has a huge following, and co-founder of IPSI's prose poetry project, which is still going after many years. Paul's numerous awards include many Premier's prizes, and the Bruce Dorr National Poetry Prize in 2021 is perhaps the most recent, or he may have won another one since then. He's probably got another 32 books since the bio was written. His newest collection of poetry, Sleeplessness, is forthcoming from Pierian Springs Press. So Paul, PH, will you read, please? I can't hear you, which means you may.
Yes, I was just unmuting. Thank you
Excellent.
very much, Cassandra. Can you hear me?
How many books are you up to now? I think that it says 16 here, but I have a feeling it's double that.
I think it might be 17, but only by one.
Oh, all right, fair enough.
Anyway, look, thanks very much for the introduction, and hi to everyone. And also particular thanks to Kurt Lovelace of Pierian Springs Press, and to Mark Vincennes, and obviously Cassandra from Lit Balm. I'm just going to read a section of the book, Sleeplessness, that is in press. And it's a book that conjures the night reverie, night thoughts, ruminations of its protagonist between the hours of 3 and 6 a.m. So it kind of picks up a little bit on what DeWitt's been reading in terms of insomnia and thinking and those sort of cognitive stuff. The book addresses ideas of love and desire, language, reading, identity, intersubjectivity. It's structured as a series of 4 extended but interlinked poetic sequences. And the section I'll read today imagines the protagonist with a book in bed, and after a long period of not sleeping. This section alludes to the tale of Genji, which, as you know, was written in the early 11th century, and Murasaki Shigebu, and it's probably the world's first novel. People debate those sorts of categories, but it's a fascinating book and now well translated into English, and I love it. And it's exactly the kind of book you need to have in bed if you're not sleeping. The reading itself, it's a sequence, so I'm just going to start and keep going. It'll only take about 6 minutes or so don't worry, I've timed it. So this is the sequence at 6 a.m. A book is a door slanting at morning, words a membrane misted by sun. The room disperses night's revenants. Holding the book, you roll in the sheets as if with a lover. Holding the book as if it's a body and absurdly trying to kiss. A body and book as if each is the other, as if words become blood. You sniff at pages that nudge your pillow, press end papers against your palm, trying to find yourself in translation, like a new form of sleep or restlessness. You start reading again. Eloquence standing clear and apart, like a Japanese castle, a language built for long habitation. Murasaki's indelible accents, like a vast architectural or glistering lake or ornate folding screen. Her words become water with fumbling currents, throwing figures onto the sibilant page. Words bubble towards a dark purple dress. There are slivers of sunshine and quick skews of rain, as if your speech wets the clean pages, yet your voice keeps the rhythm of formal address. It creates gardens already lost in the 11th century. Words assume the steps of a dance, the sound of drumming. Despite formality, insouciance gathers our arms and legs. Your reading addresses vernacular feeling. Your mouth comprehends banished views of noble houses. The present swells in excavations of speaking's art. In its intricate bones and elaborate grammar, your arm on the sheet is like a time-worn sentence. There's manicured landscapes we barely credit. At Middle River, rain falls inward. Hints of bodies behind a screen, how to decipher their unknown names. You say words might be a river crossing. Your running words become perfumed liquid. Language carries in its saturations our identities like a form of flotsam, how we float away from each other in language's lattice. Boats on a harbour, expanses of water which meanings won't touch. With a gale's onset, the page starts to tighten as if it's a sail. We arrive at a shoreline, inspecting shells that the story ejects, or they might be our numerous failings. Near an old house, we wander through Chernobyl grass, an expedition into collaring desire. You speak of belonging to viney language more than to life, then say life is language, entwining and tight, there's no separation. Murasaki's verbs are like secateurs. I suppose literature does stand apart. I say I live best in Murasaki's words. I'd hold you now behind a shoji screen. Love's punctuation caused your words to dilate and halt. You read again, and it's if the page hangs a wide mirror. The language locates spoiling thoughts we refuse to name. We circle ideas as Genji orbits Fujitsubo. This renewing flow of speaking has a suck of a tide. Nouns we've gathered, shells you've pocketed, sidelong meanings. Love's a notion we'd now slide across a sense of unease. But your whisper is like Dhaka muslin. As if to say, when you can't sleep, I'll read it again. How lovely, cried Genji, are those distances half lost in haze. You close the book, open the blind, recoil from daylight. We look at each other, disbelieving the absence of words. Your hair flames as if you've stolen some sort of halo. When will we sleep? I cannot answer. Long slopes of stone, a distant temple, the precipitous mountain. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Next up, we hear from Lindsey Martin-Bowen, who's coming in from Oregon. Lindsey has taught writing, literature, and cultural studies at the University of Missouri. She also taught criminal law at MCC Longview in Lee's Summit, Missouri. She holds an MA from the University of Missouri in creative writing and a Juris Doctor degree from the UMKC Law School. Lindsey's most recent collection of poems, The Book of Frenzies, was published in June of 2022. She's the author of over 10 books, including 6 collections of poetry. Her novella, Cicada Grove, won the grand prize in the 1987 Barbara Stork Creative Writing Contest. Her book, Crossing Kansas with Jim Morrison, won the Kansas Writers Association Award, Looks Like a Million. Inside the Virgin's Garage was a runner-up for the Nelson Poetry Book Award, includes a Pushcart-nominated poem. Welcome, Lindsey. You're still on mute, Lindsey. There we go.
Hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. And thank you, Cassandra. And thank you, of course, our leader, Kurt. Okay. I'm going to read this first one because I was thrilled and surprised that the Lamar University Press included it and their contemporary surrealist and magical realist poetry anthology. And I think some of you have been in there. I know some of them in our last meeting were in this book too, in the anthology. So this one includes a couple of images I stole from Russell Edson and Zbigniew Herbert, but I noted that. It's called Swimming in Turkey Gravy. To dig objects out of turkey gravy, listen to the floating silence. There, a rubber duck, whiling away eternity, backpedals in water that freezes over. The frozen lake dissolves into a man eating mashed potatoes and gravy, lifting forkfuls from the parquet floor. Cross-legged on that floor, you sit and envision strings of white-faced Indians whirling in Wovoka's dance. And these clamoring ghosts bring footsteps to your door. Their knocking teaches you the overturned pot and the dropped goblet are gorgeous, soaking with a duck that gives the abrupt shriek of glass, and the house explodes into fire from burning potatoes and gravy. Its language of flames leaves you breathless in a room where the bed, the chest, and the curtains remain silent. Inside here, safe from a crazy world. And this next one is based on the film. I don't know if any of you have seen it. It came out, well, in December 66, or actually 67. It was King of Hearts with Alan Bates. It's a French film that was a parody of World War I, and Bates plays a Scottish soldier who is to dismember a bomb. But my poem it's one of the official frenzy, called Cloud Power Rising. Adam Aardvark, the King of Hearts, needed some cloud power within an hour, yet he searched another hour with no luck. So he stepped into a truck stop and devoured an ant who trickled across the grass. Meanwhile, Vadmir the steer had been running in high gear because he wanted to take over the world without getting his sheets wet. So Adam didn't know where to go for his mojo until he ran into Nurse Solid Gold, known for saving souls, who boldly showed him how to fight insects and other pests. She gave Adam a few hints and a handful of bats to help him conquer gnats who attack with 3 a.m. egg bombings. Once Adam conquered those brats, he headed back to help the Cossacks win their war. Along the way, he picked up La Cage en Fou, but wasn't sure what to do with it. Still, he remembered those days when words could be read many ways, and knowing life's but a stage, he lugged La Cage to the front. When he got there, he didn't despair, for all the soldiers had shot themselves and fell dead. So the aardvark was smart after all. He learned still these days that words can be read in punny ways and often The world's just another onion. And this one is one of my few pandemic poems, because everyone else was writing them, so what could I add? But it just kind of popped up in here because, well, you know, with the toilet paper shortage and all that, but there was also a shortage in Kansas City of cooking flour. So that inspired me. Called Fizzing Out Under a Golden Moon. It happened like this. The moon hung low in the sky, looking like a giant eyeball caught between black lines that twittered and danced like butterflies gone awry. When Bonita cried after she saw what she'd hoped was a half-full canister of flour, now harboring mere ghost of white powder. So she flew to each grocery in the tiny city, but returned home without any. After slamming the front door, she threw up her hands and roared, "I can't take this pandemic anymore. Now I can't bake your birthday cake. We're out of flour, and so are the stores." The situation was grim, and Julio knew it must end. So he whisked out the door, shoved his gear shift to 4 as he sped down to Alligators. Allie was a wise cat who knew that Pendleton would have flour galore at a number of stores. So they hopped into a Subaru, Allie pressing his clutch to the floor because they need to arrive before Walmart closed its doors. He hit 95 within 10, yet he didn't notice the flashing lights behind him. A siren whined, and soon Jake Big Bird pulled alongside. "Pull over," he screamed, sounding mean, because he didn't know how else to stop the men. "Hey, Jake, give us a break," Julio yelled. "Bonita's out of flour, and it's my birthday just 4 more hours." Jake scowled a second, then relented. "All right, but here's the deal. I'll give you an escort, but you can't report it, and you owe me for one big fat meal." So off they flew, police car in tow with the Subaru. After Julia, excuse me, after Julio wrote Jake an IOU, which he still has to pay to this day. And this one is one that's in memory of James Tate. And it's called Silent Canopy. James Tate lived from December 8th, 1943 to July 8th, 2015. Pretty much exactly 72 and a half years, which I think is kind of short. Under Caribbean skies, a penguin leads his brood through tall grasses where cockatiels fly and alight on branches. The Arctic birds dart around snakes and perform poisonous dances and gymnastic in jagged steps, toes turning inward, whirling away from vipers until everyone keels over in a sweat. Most of the penguins don't dig this hot aquatic scene with thick palms instead of evergreens, under skies flat as a blue paint inside a Victorian canopy for a royal wedding. And smells of poi and hot spices don't do their bills justice. They prefer salmon from icy seas where they swim and dive deep, far from the glowering sun. Tonight they'll try not to stink when they soak their feet in Epsom salt water, sip a pearl drink, and seek out a sailor to help them find a ball of cheese, the perfect ball of cheese. You can see he kind of influenced my frenzies. And then the last one, if Kurt will forgive me, is from my book that was supposed to be out in April, but we all know how that goes. So that's when the contract was, but it is to come out in September. It's from a local publisher who only does 2 or 3 books a year. It's called Red Book Press, and she has a series of Pacific Northwest poems. And so this one, I have the book out, Crossing Kansas with Jim Morrison, but the poems didn't stop. So I ended up with another book called Cashing Checks with Jim Morrison, because it seems in this day and age that cash has become an existential idea. So, Persephone warns me about Jim, and this is in 5 tankas. Like your Jim, she says, Hades appeared magically in the field of spring, eternal spring, where I plucked wildflowers for our new king. Other nymphs and I selected perfect lilies, smell sweet as iris, white as we virgins, before Hades arrived with sly words. Come with me, he said, live in my castle far from wind, rain, and hot sun. You'll suffer no more pain from earth's mercurial temperament. His words deceived me, she said, then lowered her eyes, a tear glimmering at each corner. And I, goddess of spring, now suffer winter eternally. See Mother Demeter in spring only. I hate life in this hell. Miss sunny days. Rue the day he seduced me. Again, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Lindsay. And Kurt, you wanted to introduce the next of our authors.
Yes, Carolyn Reddy was born in Shiraz, Iran, and spent her first 8 years in Paris, living in Paris with her family, and then she relocated to Westchester, New York. I put up in the information for general information there, and she is a Reiki master, a practitioner of Zen, and she is also working on her orange belt in Taekwondo. Her works appeared in Active Muse, Calliope, Tublo Quarterly Review, and other journals. And she's also appears in the anthologies Deep Overstock, Old Favorites, and just recently published last few weeks or so, it was the Iranian Women Speak anthology, for which she also wrote the foreword for that. And she's in Rochelle, New York. And I will turn it over to her right now. She has a book forthcoming with us in the fall that will, it's called Shake the Atmosphere, the short part of the title. I'll let her introduce all that, and go take it away, Carolyn.
Thank you so much for being here. It's an honor. So many amazing voices. I'm going to start with reading from the anthology is Iranian Women Speak. And I don't know if people are aware of what's going on in Iran from last year. There's a hashtag Zan Zendegi Azadi, or Woman Life Freedom. So I'm going to start with the basement of Tehran. And then I'll read one more poem from here. And then, okay, this is the basement of Tehran. Hold still, dear child, to that fuzzy blanket until the siren stops. And when the bombs drop, we have the space beneath us that holds still as we take shelter underneath the loud alarm. And when fear reigns, stop, Azizam. Smell the fresh Nivea scent of your mother's hand. Pull closer to your madar. I tug at my papoose. My childhood blanket has collected neuron memories that can be triggered any second by the latest bombs in Ukraine. I am an REM, trapped by nightmares that steal any sense of peace. And as I collapse under the eclipse, I can remember the pieces of another life, a pair of damp skis, and the smell of cardamom chai from Nahar, lunch, while remaining a child in hiding then and now, a displaced refugee in a country that often shouts, go back home. So I will process it step by step before the rumination spirals downward. Stop and assess. Sense feet touching the moist earth, smooth fingers reaching for the object before me. My gray-black life straw, water bottle, the wolf howling above, pine trees sprawling at its feet, and mountain peaks rising towards its graceful neck. Just breathe the scene deep and rise upward from belly to throat to crown. I allow myself to sink into the tub and inhale the scent of lavender into my lungs. I let the Epsom salt rinse off these old aches and soothe my nerves, for the sound of sirens from the basement of Tehran has been replaced by the sensation of Tibetan singing bowls. Thank you. I read one more poem in here. Again, this is a Iranian Women Speak from International Human Rights Arts Festival. Songs of Koknus, and Koknus is the a phoenix of Iran. It's a little bit different, but it's the same idea of burning and rising. Songs rise from the ashes as Koknus burns away debris of thistles and last bits of sterile soil from the chambers of my heart. The spring equinox brings Nowruz as I tumble through tombs and burst from beneath the snow like a lustrous tulip. I recite poetry and swing on wings of origami doves that allow my mind to bring back memories from the wind. I was once adorned in green bands, beaming up the sky with love and hope as we cheered for peace at Cafe Nadery and beyond Washington Square Park. I breathe into dandelion seeds as a turquoise egg emerges and cracks open. Donya wraps around us as the phoenix burns our sorrows so we can emerge as star seeds, bringing forth divine feminine energy. Thank you. So again, this is Iranian Women Speak from International Human Rights Arts Festival. They're just trying to, we're all trying to raise awareness for what's happening in Iran with Zan Zindagi Azadi, or Women Life Freedom Movement, from the death of Mahsa Amini last year. So, okay. Next one is Particles of Light. This is more of a Zen poem. You wake warm while I shed my threadbare skin underneath the full moon and wait for the red-crowned crane to take flight. I falter through leaves while you retreat to a mountain and embark on your winter journey, seeking pure water in a venerable shell. We can tiptoe into a forgotten corner and spin the strings of the three fates to reveal the first snowflakes. We can excavate the gears of gravity and search for scraps of its dusty pendulum that expands in an empty room to form particles of light. Thank you. Okay, Spellcaster, the next one. Thank you. I cleared the ashes atop the altar and decluttered my fairy garden to grow, for the flicker was hidden and the words were dim as I began to awaken. Beneath the crescent cloth, underneath the shards, I left the circle and let the poking pitchfork splash spurts of blue and purple to the renewal of my heart. I closed my eyes and let the tears drip and dreamt of quartz crystals to pour, for the light of Erendil appeared, and the planets smiled as I began to widen. Beyond the shadows, beyond the bitter wind. I bottled up all the yarrow and mason jars along with stardust streams to dispel will-o'-the-wisp, and let the moon's glow soften the ripples with the mating call of the fireflies shimmering across water. Thank you. Tab of the hand. The camp counselor split our sex in half so semen could be saved. Beneath the cloth of God, we sat in chairs to hear the word. Trapped under church bells, good boys and girls nodded as a video spoke of our temples, desecrated by our obscene mind and blasphemous touch. Our wholesome nature was to be preserved beyond the flesh, but I hadn't discovered the juice of my body yet. The trace under my belly was faint. Now, drawing circles under my bushy triangle, I disrobe and wrap myself in rose scent and settle into the tub, let water drain, tuck myself under the fiber, and feel pieces of flesh falling like petals into my hand. My solitude has spoken. Got a few more. We've brought the apocalypse through the walls. This was about a really difficult breakup that was happening just around the time of Zan Zindagi Azadi, as I was kind of redefining or finding my own voice. Boxed, we've brought the apocalypse through the walls. Boxed in a cubicle, I paced our descent as the streets of London, Tehran, and New York cracked the boys' choir. In that crevice, your absence waxed, and the moon claimed my damnation. In our momentary lapse, you're pulled away from the coast. I slipped into minds of prisoners, felt jolts, and threw my bomb against the barricade. The piano silhouette hides the barrier, spilling Tori's keys, Laura's lyrics, and Azam's voice, dissolving empty pillowcases and soiled sheets. I release our cord, erase wedding bells. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Sacred Dance. This is one of the first poems I was able to publish. Sacred Dance. Twirling in a tattered tribal scarf and an empty room, I remember the empress flame that lit the embers of an old Sufi heart. I dream of a womb where the ashes of a wounded bird do not spoil. Perhaps it has been abandoned in a crypt, hidden beyond cypress trees and tiger lilies to serve me now. Reserve these shimmies and protect lost goddess shakes through maddening masquerades in the sacred dance of stillness and shifting space. Thank you. And my last one is A Star Being's Chronicle. So this is a little bit more sci-fi, a little bit more light. A Star Being's Chronicle. I thought about this book as I was floating on the surface of a bubble, human etiquette for a new world. By the way, there are so many concepts besides why a bride never gets to relax that I don't understand. The imbalance of power, brutality of war, destruction of our planet, and why humans settle for a life that isn't truly theirs. I decided to write my book to help humanity, A Star Being's Chronicle. I hope you get past the importance of hydration and skip the advice on first dates and flip the pages to this section, how to measure your mission when soul, the main engine of your domain, has crashed. My own began years ago when the doors of a zendo led to a dojo, and all that bowing, breathing, and blocking beckoned me to activate my DNA and work with the light body healer to serenade my cells and travel through the dimensions. I thought wishing on stars was silliness. But manifestation is not a sham. Those ideas sometimes disappear into the atmosphere, but if you're captured by comets, sent to the meteorologists and dispatched through bursts of sunbeams that pour through our pores. I also have these enchanted map cards that are quite handy as I loop back and forth through space and time, reliving harsh moments that get triggered by the mere scent of laundry detergent. When your life reboots your plans, shift out of your comfort zone, sift through the timelines of your life, lift your body to the skylights as you shed lesser forms. I know that this office desk thing was not your ideal career. You wanted to swim with dolphins and decipher their alien language, or become an anthropologist and travel to New Zealand to study the Maori culture. Instead, you're feeling confined and itchy in your human suit. You can borrow my steampunk spacesuit and see if it fits. Maybe the titanium seeds can reveal the right chemical reaction to free your true nature so you can dance with your photons in the coast of Papua New Guinea and smile at the yellow-lipped sea crate. Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful reading. I'm really pleased to be here with so many amazing readers. It's an honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you, Carolyn. May I introduce the next speaker?
Absolutely.
The next reader is Michael Sofranko. And I put up the feed here. He's a poet, writer, and author. He teaches the creative writing program here in Houston, Texas. He taught for 18 years in the Oxbridge Academic Summer Program at the Cambridge University in England. He has an MFA from the Iowa Writers Workshop. His early short collection of poems, Homing Instincts, received the Sean Christopher Britton Award. His next book, American Sign, received the Antonio Machado Prize in Poetry. His third book is forthcoming with Period Springs Press this fall. And I introduce to you Michael Sofranko. Unmute yourself. There you go, Michael.
Thank you very much, Kurt, and thank you to everyone who put this event together and who continues to do it. It's remarkable how events like this morphed out of the pandemic, which was something we thought might kill collective experience of poetry for quite some time. So I want to thank you for your persistence and your ingenuity along the way. We all have the experience of losing someone we love. I recently lost someone that I knew years ago in California. We were very, very close. We remained good friends over the years. And as was often the case, we would leave messages on each other's phones and one would call, and it might be the next week, it might be 3 months later, but we stayed in touch. I had a message from her that was from last September, And I happened to mention her name to my partner, Shanti, who said, "Oh, you mean the woman you know who died?" And I had no idea she was gone. This poem is for her, for Linda Sarub, and it's called On Learning to Live Without You. I received a message I never returned in time. Then you never returned at all. I cannot erase your voice. Years ago, when I stood behind you on a cliff facing the Pacific, the wind howling on shore blew your words into my ears. They rang like two shells with the sound of the sea trapped inside them. It never stopped. When the wind whipped back your hair, I moved closer so that wisps of it might play against my face. We were dreamers then. Now I have a message I never returned in time, and you who will never return at all. No guitar, no song at dusk, no prayer locked inside the small box I keep. I am losing you slowly. I am losing you over and over. Under several layers of blankets, I listen to the bayou full of the wailing lament of everything living through the false spring. And still, I hope to find you in the unreadable murmur of insects, screeching of their needs beneath the canopy of trees. There is, in the book that I have coming out in the spring, or in the fall rather, there are going to be a number of poems that are very quite political in nature. And I just think we're living in very dire times. I think we're in very dangerous times around the world, as Carolyn just pointed out, and here in the United States. The title of this poem should place it in history easily enough for you. It's called The Night the Fascists Won Election. When my fingers sailed over the soft flesh of your body, I was taken in a dream so far away, I still don't know where I was or what it was about. I wrestled all night with the flesh of every animal that crawled out of the walls, even though I knew the grip of them will one day crush me. When light finally limped through the window, and the faces that bloomed in the attic while you slept were still just a wink away, I crawled back to bed and reached out to you, flesh to flesh. The dark hallway waited, the floorboards still cold. Your touch was the only thing that kept me from giving up, from whispering into your half-deaf ear, let's just lie down here in the ashes and get it over with. I was very good friends with a poet who passed away a number of years ago named John Anderson. John once said that a poetry reading is a place where people arrive mildly disturbed and they leave utterly depressed. So I don't know the extent to which that is true. But I wanted recently to to put a little bit of the more modern world into some of my poems. And this is a lighter poem, really. It deals with a relationship. And in many ways, a reading that I heard Dee give about a month and a half ago, inspired me to write it. It's called Turn It Up. It's never about the toilet seat or the toothpaste cap or the trash in the bin. Do you want me to fiddle with the car radio? The bathroom light, do you mind if I have a little bit? Do you mind we haven't even touched in over a month? Turn off all the noodles, I said. I have the best song ever. I have a stroke of luck, a bistro steak, and the second psalm. I have the music you love. So I said, good night, bedroom light. Yes, turn it off. Let's play something new. Alexa, play it. Alexa, turn it up. I lost track of time. How am I doing here, Kurt? Time-wise, yeah?
You're good. You're good. Yeah, read one more.
This is a poem that I've never read or shown anyone before, but since tomorrow is Father's Day, it's not really about a father or my father, but it is kind of a statement about men who get to be my age and older. I tell my students I'm 100, so that they don't really know how old I actually am. But this poem is called Well Over 60. After hours on the open road, everything drums in the hum of the radial. I speed, half aware of the roadside rests, immersed in one long bluesy note, the tire's constant aum. Once, to finally answer the question of who the hell am I placed cryptic notes in the margins of a dictionary. It was like swimming for fitness. Soon I was seasick with inspiration. When asked where the white whale swam, Melville faced down a cartographer and said, I'm not interested in the facts. I'm interested in the truth. It's not a place you can point to on a map. My daughter is deaf. She says, I hear with my eyes. Yet so many nights I hear how to see, how to drive the car into where by listening to the words inside the humming tires. Sometimes I have nothing but the words. One night, halfway down the Jersey coast, a woman was waiting. I wanted to drown in her hair. But because of the words in the song I heard, I knew to turn back. I don't care what the road signs say. I'm doing well over 60. I speed. I sing with the radio constantly. If you ask me why I gyrate in ways unbecoming my age, love, I say. The old urges remain. And the feeling of every day remains plain, especially the pain, which is, of course, a source of song. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Great reading. Next we hear from Sandra Tyler, whose forthcoming collection with Appearance Springs Press is Mother's Night Garden. Sandra is the author of Blue Glass, a New York Times notable book of the year, and After Lydia, both published by Harcourt Brace. She earned her BA from Amherst College and her MFA in creative writing from Columbia. She has taught creative writing at Columbia, Wesleyan, Manhattanville, and she is the editor-in-chief and founder of the web's premier online literary and fine art magazine, The Woven Tale Press, Arts and Literary Journal. Her new memoir, Mother's Night Garden, will be out this fall. Welcome, Sandra.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. And I just want to thank DeWitt because he has read this memoir a couple of times through the pandemic and has persevered with me to get it out there, and for pointing me towards Period Press. And thank you to Kurt and Michael for helping me to get it out there, hopefully find some readers. This memoir is about the last years of my mother's life when I was trying to be a mother and a daughter. And it was a very fine line. I'm just going to read the first 4 pages of the chapter. Up until the last call my mother made to me on the day she was dying, barely a day went by when we didn't talk on the phone. And after we'd hang up, one or the other would call back about something we'd forgotten. My mother to remind me to pick up a box of kitty litter, or me to remind her of the breaded cutlets I made for her in the freezer. As time went on, our conversations would become primarily about her crises, the gremlin in the house, who took not only her glasses and her address book, but her pill bottles, misplaced checkbooks, and car keys. She called me in a panic, thinking her purse was stolen until it was returned from the grocery store where she'd left it in the shopping cart. But she also could call just because, flipping through another catalog, she'd come across something else she thought would make a good present for her grandsons, or just because she had to tell me about the whole bevy of wild turkeys who appeared out of nowhere in her backyard. When my boys were toddlers, I called her most days after around lunchtime, once I'd put them down for their nap, and my mother was eating a bowl of barley or lentil soup. If she was having her soup in the sunroom, she'd tell me about the young doe that came to drink from her bird bath. I would think out loud to her about how I'd noticed my first real wrinkle. My then 93-year-old mother chuckled, "Your first? It's not even a laugh line." I was upset. This was my first real wrinkle. It's there all the time. Try hemorrhoid cream, like Doreen does. Doreen at the time was the one who came to help my mother, one of the many well-intended but inept souls who came and went. On your face? She has flawless skin and is about your age. This wasn't what I was looking for. I'm not putting something on my face that goes on your butt. Well, then you have to start using serum and a good brand of wrinkle cream. I use moisturizer. That's not wrinkle cream. True. I'd avoided anything labeled for wrinkles. Yes, I had some laugh lines and a few crow's feet, but not wrinkles. She laughed. Wait until you get a turkey neck. Before I had children and was trying to get pregnant, there were those phone calls when I just needed to hear the sound of my mother's voice. After I found out I had miscarried, I called her from the beach where I parked my car. The doctor had pointed to the hazy bean-shaped image on the screen, to where the heart should have been beating. I called my husband at work and could feel him, for my sake, trying to rise up out of his own well of disappointment. I told him he did not need to come home, that I would be all right, which I thought I would be until I was driving home and could not fathom walking into the empty house to where I left my coffee on the counter, the mug still half full, from the time before, when it had not occurred to me that our baby's heart could stop beating without my ever having known. On my flip phone, I sobbed openly to my mother, and she said, "Oh, honey, I hate to see you like this." There was nothing she could say to make me feel better, but she was able to share in my pain. I knew she was more upset by my devastation than by the loss of this baby, and therein lay the comfort. When I don't think my husband and I could have afforded each other, not until later, after we'd had time to digest the news separately. When finally I was pregnant with Lucas, I called her after the sonogram. I found out I was having a boy, and I only knew about mothers and daughters. "What am I going to do with a boy?" I cried, until we were both laughing. After Lucas, I would have Owen just 17 months later, and so it was the boys I often talked about, relating their latest antics of running outside in their diapers to watch the garbage trucks, or taking down all my books to play library. And my mother would laugh and tell me I should be writing all this down. This only irritated me. I seemed to have lost all capacity for written words, never mind cohesive thoughts. I'd wanted this to be a stay-at-home mom. I didn't want to miss their sucking on popsicles to melt down their arms, the climbing into laundry baskets to scoot across the floor. But I also missed the immersive of writing, of being a writer, never more content than when I was working on a novel. Rather, I'd always been the least restive, because even in those spaces in between, when I wasn't writing, I would be thinking about it. Unlike the spaces I had now, when it was the boys who were most content, engrossed as they plowed their tractors through the sandbox, while I seemed reduced to a kind of stupor. This perhaps is the dichotomy of motherhood, at once too much space and not enough. But these alone times with my toddlers I found easier than play dates and forced socialization, as much for us moms as for our children. Us stay-at-home moms were schooled together in a way we never would have been otherwise. Around the library train table on our knees, helping our toddlers push the wooden trains around the tracks, or a gymboree billowing one large communal parachute over our children's heads. I hadn't been prepared for this facelessness of motherhood, how we seemed only able to talk about our children without ever talking about ourselves. I would know some of these women for years, running into them at pickup when our kids were streaming out of the elementary school, without them ever knowing I was a writer. I would only find out one was a dental hygienist when she would go back to work for my dentist and clean my teeth. When I joined the Mother's Center, a dank place in the basement of the Presbyterian Church, where mothers congregated with their strollers to find camaraderie, I'd tell my mother about meetings I'd attend where we swapped birthing stories and our views on controversial vaccines, and how I found myself struggling to fit in, as I hadn't struggled since junior high. Back when sameness mattered more than differentiation, when I was hiding who I really was, now a frustrated writer. How I was thinking of quitting the center, preferring my own company, and my mother would say, "Oh, Sandy, don't be like me." As an artist, my mother could go on then about regretting turning down lunch invites because it interrupted her time in the studio, regretting since moving to Long Island not having fostered closer friendships for the support she now wished for in her old age, for not making the effort to be more social. At the same time, my mother recognized my discontent for what it was. For the first time in my life, I had no creative outlet independent of my children. I was feeling failed as a writer and falsely believed having babies could make up for that failure, that I could write my children in a way that they were quickly proving to be writing themselves. And so my mother could also say, "You have to find your happiness from within." But these conversations could sometimes lead elsewhere, back to herself and her own feelings of failure. "How do you think I feel?" she'd interject. At the end of my life and having nothing to show for it. This was something in our phone calls over those last years she would voice again and again when she no longer was painting, her last attempts at small pastels only exasperating her frustration. I knew she was talking about believing she had not reached her full potential as an artist, and I found these calls especially hard. Still, I could take an only childish offense and quip, "Well, you had me," resisting reminding her of calling me Rosebud in the hospital when I was born, of how I had been her miracle after trying for 5 years for a baby, of what she'd always told me, her astonishment and pure delight when the rapid test was positive, and of what I assumed having a baby would fulfill her in a way that being an artist never could. Her silence on the line could reverberate across the distance between us, our 2 points on the map, on our different stages of our lives. Then she would only say, "Well, of course," but she never finished that sentence, as how could she? How could she explain that referentially, as to her life as an artist, not as a mother, I was entirely beside the point? She didn't need to explain, because I was already learning about the referential part, the uncomfortable truth about motherhood, that we cannot finally sustain ourselves so selflessly. Not even my mother could, despite my having been her miracle. And I can wonder whether as the days drew on, with nursing and sleeplessness, with the mindless monotony of giving, whether she too must have begun to miss that space she could call her own. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandra. And thank you all for such a wonderful reading. And especially thank you to Kurt for curating this wonderful selection of authors. Lit Balm will reappear in the month of August, I believe. We're taking a bit of a sabbatical at the moment. Some of us will be abroad as well. So we hope to see you then. And it should be, of course, it'll be a bumper show to kick off the next season. With that, I pass the mic over to Cassandra for the open mic section of the show.
Yeah, it's always exciting. Open mic's going to be brilliant. Although we're missing DeWitt because he already read, so it's going to be hard to fill the little gap that is DeWitt in my reading list. But I'll survive. Right. So John is always first because I love the way he sets the tone. Something often crazy, sometimes surprising, and he goes in an opposite direction. So John Wessick, what in the wombat have you got for us?
Thank you, Cassandra. This is called Semantics Takes a Holiday. The Pythagorean theorem is never there when you need it. It walked out on us during the reign of Emperor Maximilian of Connecticut. Rumor has it it's living 5 kilometers south of the South Pole with a mute who can't stop talking. The occasional child support payments were coarse as a herd of beef stroganoff, the sour cream with a mechanical advantage of 3, and mushrooms digitized into 32-bit integers. None of this helped my English grades because I've always been colorblind with respect to adverbs. In those tender years when my hormones subtended 3.5 minutes of arc, I found baseball denser than Glaswegians, so I joined the introvert team. Our events were well attended by those occupied elsewhere. Taking my newfound enthusiasm for apathy to college, I vowed to major in the discipline with the highest score in pentathlon. A torn Achilles tendon hobbled literature, and judges disqualified mathematics for performance-enhancing drugs. Linguistics was first to cross the finish line, so I enrolled in its intestinal tract. I survived on pots of instant syntax, washed down with kegs of morphology, but my grade point average developed an ulcer due to the steady diet of postmodernism. To make matters worse, my textbook told me it was pregnant. I abandoned my dreams of a vegan Minkowski space and took a job as a Cobb salad. After 9 perpendiculars, my textbook birthed a jury trial named Appendix. Once I save enough decibels, we'll travel south of the South Pole to meet its hypotenuse.
That was amazing. All of us want to meet a good hypotenuse. Or just become a Cobb salad. John, you've outdone yourself this week. Absolutely love it. It's my new Animal Crackers favorite. Next up, we have Linda Waladika. Now, Linda, you have some awesome title, right? The spoken word poet laureate of the whole of the world. Can you remind me of that before you read your poem for us, please?
It's Beat Poet Laureate of Massachusetts.
Pretty amazing. It's pretty impressive. I think you should put that as your name instead of your actual name on your Zoom screen.
Well, they're all over the United States, not just Massachusetts.
Yeah, but hey, you got the good place. You're in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
All good.
Thank you.
Excellent. And you're going to read for us. Hooray.
Okay. Yellow ink. Liquid flows from pen, drips golden. I knew the day would glisten, that God would listen. Sweat drips from her brow at noon, handkerchief blots. Up in the clouds, a balloon she spots. He dries teardrops from her young eyes. She mounts her pony, watches sunrise. Yellow sunbeam, brighten horizon, big sky opens, vivid blue. Clouds cast pearlescent hue. Wispy tendrils crown forehead, curly lashes frame eyes of green. Her golden tresses gleam. Baby sleeps, so it seems, suckles thumb, sighs, rolls over sweet dreams. Aged couple rock, sing, speak. The porch boards recant with every creak. Puppy whimpers, kitten purrs, sun slips down behind God's earth. Moon's aglow within a mist. Candle drips like yellow ink. Thank you.
Wow, I love the yellow ink, but I do love those internal and end line rhymes. No wonder you have that job. That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I do like a bit of purple or green ink myself, but maybe I'll have to look at some yellow. Mike Folds from his incredible futuristic garage. He's back. He's going to give us something great. Where are you, Mike?
I turned on the wrong thing. I think I turned off the video
here.
instead of turned on.
Oh, we have to see you. You have to see your background. It's awesome.
I'm going to read an ekphrastic poem that I saw in a magazine called Eye of Photography. And it's a daily magazine that you can see online. In fact, it's only online. Out of France. It's actually the World de la Photographie, but anyway, I read the English version because my French is sucks. So it's a photograph after the same name of the King and Queen of Coney Island. The photo is by Louis Stettner. Seeing the image and then a flash, I knew them then, though I didn't. On their way to, with anticipation, building strength. On their way from, exhausted by the experience. In a room with many others, you might see them shuffling conversations like business cards. Or on a train, be mystified by their indifference. Thank you.
That was amazing. I love your ekphrastic work. I know you've done a lot of ekphrastic work with a lot of different things. That was awesome. You might see them shuffling conversation like business cards. What a fantastic line. Thank you. It's so nice to have you back.
Thank you.
We are going to end with the thank you. We are going to end with the fabulous duo. You only get them here on Lit Balm, one after another. We've got Brooklyn Badass, Cindy Hockman, followed by The Kitchen with Bob Heeman. So Cindy, you're going to kick us off with something awesome from your living room.
Okay. This is not an alliterative poem. I'm going to read two short poems in honor of Father's Day. I know in Australia, Father's Day is September 3rd. I looked it up. It's 2 days before my birthday, as a matter of fact, but here we celebrate it tomorrow. My father left this earth in an untimely manner in 1977. And these poems I probably wrote in my 20s. Two short ones. Remembering my dad for Father's Day. My father loved weak tea, burnt toast, strawberries and cream, cherry tomatoes, tanning his face in the sun on the corner. The poems that I wrote, and justice. And the second one is called Epitaph. And I had to revise it because I had a line in there that everyone was interpreting sexually. And I certainly did not mean it that way. And I know Cassandra would have appreciated it, but everyone else was making me feel like, I should change it. So I did. Epitaph. You created me. You swaddled me in solitude. Gave me your aquiline nose, a caravan of fears, and a bandage round my brittle heart. You were my jack-in-the-box joker, my midnight minstrel maestro. But then you died on a crucifix of question marks. Thank you.
Cindy, no one does it quite like you. You are an honorary Australian. The fact you know that Father's Day here is September is amazing. I just have to get you onto Vegemite, as I said, and then you'll be like the whole.
Vegemite, even with yogurt. And
It wouldn't work.
Yogurt doesn't have an H in it. Sorry.
That's true. I tell you what, though, I would have liked to see little baby Cindy swaddled. You'll have to like share screen, and we'll have to see a little baby Cindy photo at some point, I think.
I think actually the H is an alternative spelling. I've seen it in print. both ways, so.
Awesome. Well, we have to finish up the show. We have the amazing Bob from his kitchen. I say it every time, but you know, I take a little bit away from me of something crazy that Bob says. Sometimes it's information, sometimes it's something else. I never quite know, but it's not a lip balm if Bob doesn't finish it up for us. So Bob, from the kitchen, with the hanging dishcloth in the shape of a U.
Thank you. Information. What was it that was eaten? What was it that was drunk? What was it that they wore to talk with God? How many steps did it take to make the forest theirs? How long did it take to learn to speak, to learn to draw, to learn to write? How much was lost to the wind and waves and angry earth? How much was lost to religion and superstition? How much was lost to war?
Oh, wow. He got us with the last bit, didn't he? But I'm sure there's a question there that we can all take away with this. I will probably sidestep the war and go for what was eaten because I'm thinking about breakfast, Bob. You always made me think. I think it's going to be scrambled eggs. I'm not sure. It could be anything, but it's 8:30, so it's breakfast time. Mark, over to you after that amazing show.
What a show. What a show. Thank you all. Thank you, Kurt, for organizing again. And of course, thank you, DeWitt, Paul, Lindsey, Caroline, Michael, and Sandra. It's been a fantastic show. And once again, as I said, we shall see you all in August with unexpected news. But to close up tonight, I'm going to go really quiet and gentle. This is a little poem called A Window on the Park. Charges of bees in the high trees, a scattering of queenly gifts, an embrace on an island in the reeds, a mower of meadows knee-deep in weeds, a boat made of plastic swans. Thank you, everybody. Hope to see you in August, and lots of love and poetry.
Peace, love, and scrambled eggs. Mwah.
With Vegemite.